It's breakfast on GB News.
Well, hello there. It's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into the things that have got you talking today. Now, I pretty much know what's got you talking today, the fact that we finally have a new Prime Minister. Goodness knows how long that took. 3 priorities, that's what Liz Truss has set out today. Did you see what they are? Working again. She wants to get Britain to be an aspirational nation, get us all out to work. I thought we already were, but let's gloss over that. Energy crisis, that was priority number 2, the big thing that anyone, all of us pretty much, are worried about. And the NHS. Also, broadband got a bit of a mention, as did house building. I'll tell you what did not get a mention though. The goings-on in the Channel. So, did you see the priorities? And what did you think to them? What was missing? I think I know what some of you will say. And were you happy with the rest? Tell me. First, let's get tonight's latest news headlines.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Good evening to you. Liz Truss has made her first speech as Prime Minister from the steps of Downing Street, saying she'll turn Britain into an aspiration nation. Addressing the country, Ms Truss praised her predecessor, Boris Johnson, saying history will see him as a hugely consequential Prime Minister. She also promised to tackle the issues which she said are holding Britain back and stand up for freedom and democracy around the world. The new Prime Minister also said she had a bold plan to grow the economy through tax cuts and reform, promising to take action this week to secure the UK's energy supply.
We will transform Britain into an aspiration nation with high-paying jobs, safe streets, and where everyone everywhere has the opportunities they deserve. I will take action this day and action every day to make it happen. I am confident that together we can ride out the storm, we can rebuild our economy, and we can become the modern, brilliant Britain that I know we can be.
Well, earlier on, Boris Johnson tendered his resignation to Her Majesty the Queen in Scotland. Mr Johnson and his wife Carrie spent almost 40 minutes with the monarch before leaving Balmoral. And the US President has congratulated the new Prime Minister. In a tweet, Joe Biden said he's looking forward to deepening the special relationship between the two countries and working on global challenges, including continued support for Ukraine. The White House has confirmed the President will speak with Liz Truss this evening. Well, our new Prime Minister will begin to build her cabinet, with several appointments expected to be announced this evening. One MP who won't be playing a key role is Dominic Raab. The Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary has announced he is to step down, saying, "I look forward to supporting the government from the backbenches." Well, in news away from politics today, the Scottish Government has introduced emergency legislation to freeze rents as part of a major plan to deal with the cost of living crisis. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, announced a temporary hold on evictions as she presented her programme for government. She also said ScotRail fares will be frozen until at least March next year, and she confirmed an energy strategy will be published in the coming year.
Crucially, I can confirm that we will time the emergency legislation to ensure, subject of course to Parliament's agreement, that the practical effect of this statement is that rents are frozen from today. We are prioritising interventions that will provide security, stability and reassurance by safeguarding jobs and homes.
Official sources have told GB News Albanian criminal gangs are risking a major tragedy by pushing small boats into the English Channel in poor weather conditions. Despite deteriorating weather, the Ministry of Defence figures show 188 people crossed into UK waters yesterday, and today at least 3 small boats were intercepted. So far this year, more than 27,500 people have made the dangerous journey across the Channel. A new £370 million HS2 station is set to bring around 1,000 new jobs to the West Midlands, with the Mayor, Andy Street, saying it'll play a critical role in the area's economic recovery. Construction for the Birmingham Interchange Station, which will service the NEC, the city's airport and Solihull, has already begun, but it won't be opening until 2026. Mr Street told GB News the new jobs will be given to locals.
1,000 jobs, critical, and we will be making sure that they are given to local people. Indeed, we'll be working with the contractors, as we already are, with Balfour Beatty, for example, to train local people, unemployed people, specifically for jobs in HS2. So we've got a great record on that, and I'm sure we'll do the same with Lango Rourke.
Prince Harry has described Dusseldorf as a beautiful city at a speech at a launch event for the Invictus Games. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are in Germany at the moment to promote the Games, marking 1 year until the event gets underway. Prince Harry founded the Games to help aid the rehabilitation of military personnel and veterans, giving them the challenge of competing in sporting events in an event similar to the Paralympics. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Back now to Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel, we've got the columnist at the article and founder of the Contrarian Prize, Ali Mirage, and the journalist and political consultant, Emma Burnell. Good evening to both of you. And you know the drill on Dewbs & Co, don't you? It's not just about us three here, it's about you at home as well. I want to know what's on your mind tonight. Are you liking what you're seeing and hearing? Is there something missing? Do you want to see something else? Someone else? Tell me. Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email, or you can tweet me at gbnews or at Michelle Dewbs. Finally. Someone's just written in and said, why is Michelle complaining about how long the process took? If she didn't understand the process, she shouldn't be in a job. I understand the process, all right. I just found it, quite frankly, utterly boring. Never known anything take so long. So I today am a happy woman because finally we have our new Prime Minister and now the hard work starts. In her maiden speech today outside of number 10, Liz Truss says she has 3 key priorities.
Firstly, I will get Britain working again. I have a bold plan to grow the economy through tax cuts and reform. I will cut taxes to reward hard work and boost business-led growth and investment. I will drive reform in my mission to get the United Kingdom working, building and growing. We'll get spades in the ground to make sure people are not facing unaffordable energy bills. And we will also make sure that we are building hospitals, schools, roads and broadband. Secondly, I will
I've been waiting to get a doctor's appointment. Do you listen to that and go, yes, all my problems are solved? Or not? Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, joins me now live from Downing Street. Darren, 3 priorities there. How have they gone down?
Well, frankly, actually, I'm just going to stop for 1 second because we've got a car pulling up just outside. I think this might be the first, Michelle, of the cabinet appointees. Let's see who gets out. It is a pretty miserable afternoon here in Downing Street. And then again, as always with live television, maybe no one's going to get out. We thought that might be the first cabinet arrival, but maybe not. What do I make of Liz Truss' speech? I thought in many regards she touched upon these things that we thought. Oh, here we go. Kwasi Kwarteng. Are you looking forward to being Chancellor? There you go. There is the first of what we expect is quite a few new cabinet ministers, Michelle, going into number 10 tonight. Kwasi Kwarteng, who had up until now been the business secretary, he is expected to be the new Chancellor of the Exchequer in Liz Truss government, and my word, he is going to have a pretty big task on his hands, in the sense that he's going to have to steer what Liz Truss talked about, trying to provide economic growth to the economy at a time in which the Bank of England fear that we could be in a rather prolonged recession, and at the same time also try and deal with the consequences of those rising energy prices, of which we're expecting an announcement this coming Thursday. In terms of a speech, it did recognise many of those difficulties, didn't it, Michelle, that the country is not in a great state at the moment, and that things do need to change, particularly on those three key priorities of the economy, energy prices and the NHS. But it's also quite a sombre speech in some regards. Yes, it's a note of optimism that Britain could get through all of this, but none of the flowery language or indeed references to Roman senators that we had from the previous incumbent of Boris Johnson earlier on today. And I think that's a sign of what we're likely to see in the days, weeks and months to come. A more sober Prime Minister, someone who is not necessarily going to be as charismatic as the one we've just had, but that is who Liz Truss frankly is. In terms of what's going to happen now, well, we're getting the cabinet into position. We know who's not going to be in it, because several of them have revealed in the last couple of minutes that they're not expecting to serve in government. People like Dominic Raab, who had been Deputy Prime Minister, Grant Shapps, who had been Transport Secretary, Steve Barclay, who had been Health Secretary, they're all returning to the backbenches. But it looks like we're going to at least get our first appointment in the next couple of minutes. Kwasi Kwarteng there, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, almost certainly entering Downing Street to be appointed into that position.
Oh, exciting stuff, Darren. Well, rather you than me being out in the rain, and we will stay glued and tuned to that door and that road, and we'll bring all the latest to all of you throughout the programme. But for now, thank you very much, Darren McCaffrey. Ali Mirage, what did you make to what you heard from Liz Truss today?
Well, she outlined three priorities: the economy, the energy crisis and the NHS. I think the top of those is going to be the energy issue. I mean, that is the real thing that's on people's minds. We've seen Ofgem announce the increase in the price cap by 80%, which is going to kick in from October. And as I always said right the way through her leadership campaign, despite the fact that in an early interview with the Financial Times in that campaign, she said she was not in favour of handouts, the first thing she's going to do is a massive fiscal intervention, billions and billions of pounds, to do exactly that. And the question is, are those handouts going to be given to everyone? Are they going to be targeted? And also, how is this going to be paid for? Because ultimately, if they're doing it via a loan scheme to energy companies, are bills going to go up over time? Is it going to be paid for by taxes? I doubt it, because she doesn't like raising taxes, and she actually ruled that out during the campaign. So it's going to be through growth, this miraculous growth that's going to occur, even though we're cutting taxes and borrowing loads of money. Now, this is all fine. You can see that the financial markets have already rallied on the back of this news, but financial markets are fickle. And ultimately, investors will take a view on the credibility of the UK as a credit proposition and whether they want to buy our bonds, because this is going to be done through the issuing of government bonds. And by the way, Michelle, the other thing we've forgotten about in all this is we've already got inflation at double digits, heading to 13, 15, 18, 22%, take your pick, depending on which city analyst you want to follow. This is going to lead Andrew Bailey to raise interest rates. Interest rates and those increases are going to be painful for people. They are indeed. Emma Burnell, what do you think to what you've heard today?
I mean, there wasn't a great deal of detail in there, which you can kind of expect.
Yeah, I was going to say, give her a break.
Introduction. But what I didn't hear was anything that differentiated her from anything of the last 12, 20, 30 years, really. It was, yes, of course, the priorities are the economy and the NHS. I thought it was odd that she put work rather than the economy, because whereas previously one of the big issues has been unemployment, that's not the crisis we're in. We don't have an employment crisis. We have a crisis where work isn't paying the way it used to. And that's what she's going to have to answer. Between that conundrum, where inflation is soaring ahead of wages, many wages have been stagnant for such a long time that they were not in any state to be soared ahead of, plus the fact that costs are rising, not just energy, though that obviously has to be the priority, but all the things in which energy impacts. And while we're talking about household and small business energy, other businesses are going to be putting costs up, which will impact back onto those small houses. So things like food bills are rising up inexorably.
Well, just on that point that Emma made, I think it's a very, very important and powerful point, which is Liz Truss talks about high-paid jobs. Well, there's a real problem for her, going to confront her in the next few days. There are rail strikes next week. There are strikes writ large with barristers, with NHS workers, with potentially teachers. Across the public sector, there are strikes coming, and those are because people feel that their wages have stagnated for the last 10 years. So high-paid jobs is all very well, but I think what people want now is not boosterish claptrap. And I'm willing to give Liz the benefit of the doubt. She's just come in. We need her to succeed. I want her to do well. But people also want competence. She talks about the NHS and about getting appointments. There's a 6.7 million waiting list, and she is reversing the increase in national insurance, which was meant to be dealing with the NHS backlog in the next 3 years and in the longer term dealing with the social care crisis. Apparently, that's all going to be coming from general taxation, right?
Yeah.
All about growth again.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you, Ali. Look, I'm here. I'm on the red team. You can tell by the lippy, right?
And your belt.
And my belt and my shoes, which you can't see. But
and your hairband.
And my hairband. I am fully accessorised. But we are in a country in crisis. I want Liz Truss to succeed. I just don't hear from her yet the things that I think will succeed. So while I appreciate the more sombre tone, I think that's a vast improvement on what we had before. I want to see something that makes not necessarily me as a lefty reassured, but people who I know who are apolitical, who are seriously worried about how they're going to pay their bills, buy their food, feed and clothe their kids in the part of East London I live in. And I think that's who needs reassurance from the government.
But you also,
right now.
Emma, you talk about East London. I live in East London as well. And, you talk about, Liz is talking about safe streets. I can tell you, I walked out of this tube station the other day and there was a police tape up because there was a stabbing and someone got killed. Apparently 100 people are involved in this, 100 yards from my house. Now, the reality is, the Tories were always known to be tough on crime. But unfortunately, we've got a rate at the moment where 6% of robberies, 4% of serious thefts and other things,
1%
burglaries,
of rape.
Exactly, are being solved here.
Yeah.
This is a serious problem. The 20,000 increase in officers, which was meant to be going back to 2010 levels, has still not been achieved. So these are serious problems to deal with. She has got the most gargantuan, problematic in-tray of any Prime Minister I can believe in living memory.
She's not got a huge amount of time.
She doesn't have a lot of time. There'll be a certain amount of goodwill. She's got the party now who's going to give her a break. She has just won a leadership election. Everyone needs her and wants her to do well. She's also about to appoint Kwasi Kwarteng as her chancellor. We expect, and Kwasi is many things. He's a historian. He wrote a book about Thatcher's 6 months to define her premiership, about Thatcher in 1981, when she faced a real hellish period. And so he's a student of history. He will understand how difficult this is. But it's going to be about the big choices she makes. I'm not buying this growth plan yet, but I hope it works. Let's see. The other thing is, Michelle, 100 billion of debt on top of the 2.5 trillion of public debt we've already got. The question, and what makes me really uncomfortable, is we are going to be mortgaging our children and our grandchildren's future to pay for all this. And I think with intergenerational inequality already as bad as it is, I think that's bad.
Just so you know, by the way, because if you're listening, not watching, you won't be aware, but we're showing the door of Downing Street as we speak. Suella Braverman has just gone through that door, ladies and gentlemen. There'll be lots of toing and froing and coming and going, and we'll have it all for you. No idea who that is, just right in my shot there, as I tell you, all the details.
Michelle, my phone's on vibrate, just in case.
Is it? Oh, very good, yeah. So Suella Braverman just gone in. Lots of people actually referencing the fact that immigration wasn't covered in Theresa May's speech, but, lots of people, Emma, writing in. My inbox is full of people right now, people like Margaret, saying we have to give Liz a chance. Lots and lots of people worried, perhaps, that the media, certain segments of the media, they're going to be all over Liz Truss, trying to undermine her before she's even had the opportunity to get in.
I think you have to differentiate between undermining and examining. And I think it's reasonable in a crisis, and there have been plenty of times where GB News has led the charge on questioning crisis responses on other things. So I think it's essential that we, as a free press, we continue to question whether they're making the right choices. As I said before, there's productive
and then there's deliberate undermining.
Absolutely, and I do think there is a line, and I think, I'm an opinion journalist, so my job is to sometimes cross that line slightly, but it's important that the straight news doesn't. However, what I think is really important is that we absolutely say that there's a difference between left-right sniping and genuinely hoping that this country can come back together, quite apart from anything else, because I would like the Labour Party to take over a country that hasn't fallen apart.
Well, yeah, what do you think to the inbox as it is? Ali's just been mentioning it there. It is intense, to put it mildly. She was full of energy, I felt today. Very optimistic, honoured was the word I think that she used.
This is the peak.
Well, yeah. What you think is all downhill?
Well, no, I hope it's not. I hope it's not. But I hope she enjoyed the plane ride back from Balmoral, because that is going to be the high point. It's really, really tough for her.
Yeah.
And we all wish her well.
No, it is the worst honeymoon I can think of in certainly my lifetime for any PM.
Absolutely.
See, lots and lots and lots of you are writing in, and the sense is we need to give Liz Truss a chance. Mike there says, channel crossings, it was glaringly missing from Liz Truss's opening 3 goals. Other people are pointing out, well, actually, it's not what Liz is saying, it's what she's doing. Suella Braverman, I just mentioned, going into number 10 there. Huge rumours that she's going to be taking over what was Priti Patel's job. Some might say Priti didn't do that much of a good job. We'll be taking a break in a couple of minutes. When we come back, I want to get into a couple of these policy areas in detail. Energy. What should Liz Truss do when it comes to energy? Immigration, channel crossings. Suella Braverman, if indeed that's who's appointed, has her work cut out. Is she up to the job? What should her priorities be? Can she fix the issue in the channel? Keep your thoughts coming in tonight on all things Liz Truss, all things the Tories. What do you want them to do next? This is an opportunity, isn't it? Shake things up a little bit, make some changes. What should those changes be? You tell me, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. On the panel, we have got Ali Mirage and Emma Burnell. We are talking all things Liz Truss, Downing Street. That's James Cleverly there. You can see the back of his head as he goes into number 10. He's rumoured to be the potential new Foreign Secretary. We've also had going in Suella Braverman just a few moments ago, rumoured to be the next Home Secretary. Who else we had? Oh yes, Kwasi Kwarteng, rumoured to be the new Chancellor. So we'll keep you abreast of the doors opening and shuts and who is going in there. Lots of comments from you guys coming in tonight. Don says Liz is damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. I hope that she and her cabinet just move ahead and do whatever they think is best. We all just need to give her a chance. Alan says Liz Truss is absolutely right with her priorities. Get people working, stop illegal migration and reform a money for nothing benefit system. He says that's the winning formula to win the next general election. Rob says Truss has her priorities wrong. Surely the energy crisis is number one, followed by the cost of living and then immigration. Carol says she has not mentioned social care. The NHS cannot succeed, she says, without social care being sorted out. There you go. Let me know your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk is my email address. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs. We'll be talking about the cabinet, the new cabinet, by the way. Who would you like to see in it? Who would be your dream cabinet? Do you have such a thing? Kemi Badenoch, I think she'd be an interesting one to see in the cabinet, wouldn't she? But tell me your thoughts. Grant Shapps is out, by the way. Dominic Raab is out. Steve Barclay is out. Let me know who you want to see in. Now, Kwasi Kwarteng, I've just mentioned, potentially going to be the new... it always makes me chuckle. Yeah, it always makes me chuckle when you see just a random face sweeping in front of our Downing Street camera, by the way. Get out of the way. Right, as I mentioned, Ali and Emma keeping me company right through till 7 o'clock. Energy. Should we talk about that then? Liz Truss outlined it as one of her, let's say, obvious priorities. She's going to give us a plan this week as to what she's going to do about soaring costs. Ali Mirage, I've seen rumours as high as 200 billion for a package to try and put the energy cap or keep the energy cap where it is or was. We don't have a magic money tree, although sometimes, got to be honest, it feels like we do. What would you like to see Liz Truss do to get a hold of these energy bills?
Well, we do have a magic money tree because money can be found and governments can raise money. The question is, how do you pay for it? Pay for it, right? That is the fundamental question. Now, Liz Truss was saying she didn't believe in handouts, but she's going to have to do a huge fiscal event. It could be well over 100 billion. We don't know. We'll find out this week. She's saying she's going to make an announcement in the next few days on it. It's going to be probably around, from what we're hearing briefed out of number 10, is probably going to be around keeping energy prices around £2,500 and then helping the energy companies by offering them loans or some sort of scheme where they can actually buy this energy in the market. And then eventually this will all have to be paid back either through taxation or through higher bills or through growth in the economy, which is probably what Liz Truss is hoping for. Now,
do you support a cap?
Well, I think that there has to be some sort of cap. I wouldn't necessarily, if I was Chancellor, and she hasn't called yet, I wouldn't have targeted it just to everyone. She knows
you're at the dizzy heights of Dewbs & Co.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing, exactly. So the thing is, I would have targeted it at the very poorest in society because I think that in this situation, you can't keep spending money ridiculously hand over fist. We spent 400 billion on COVID. We're now going to be spending potentially well over 100 million on this, 100 billion rather on this. And you've got these crises are now not once in a generation or once in a lifetime crises. There are multiple crises occurring. And fundamentally, Michelle, why is this occurring? It's occurring because of the war in Ukraine. And there is no...
It's not just that. Hang on a minute.
Well, there is largely to do with that. Okay, yeah. Yes, we woke up after 2 years of hibernation in COVID. Yes, that's true. Inflation was already rising. But a large part of it, and particularly the gas supply issue, which is spiking the price right now, is because the gas supply has basically been turned off by Russia, and it was already 20% of its capacity in the last few weeks anyway. Why is that? Because we imposed sanctions. I'm not saying any of this is wrong, but it should have been framed properly, and there is no end game in sight to that war. So this could be lasting a very long time, and therefore the government is right to look at this over 2 years. But there is no free lunch here. We are eventually going to have to pay for this, and it's going to be all reflected in also the credit rating of our country.
Well, joining me now, our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, is at Downing Street. Liam, good evening to you. It's looking like Kwasi Kwarteng will be the next Chancellor. Is that a good appointment in your mind?
Well, he's certainly somebody with a sense of history. He's somebody who's recently been Business Secretary. He's been Minister of State at Energy. So in terms of his recent experience, he is well equipped, I would say, to begin to tackle this energy crisis. His likely government colleague, Jacob Rees-Mogg, has been with energy companies for a lot of today, planning this energy price cap, which we just heard about. I think prices will be capped at where they were in April, around £2,000 per year for the typical household, or maybe a little bit more, with some kind of lease-back scheme where energy companies take on big loans. They're not on the government balance sheet, but the government's standing behind them in order to try and deliver energy at prices below those highly elevated wholesale prices for households and indeed businesses across the UK. That's the big news today, I think, not confirmed but briefed, that businesses will also be benefiting from this energy reform package, because that off-gem energy price cap that we've talked about endlessly over recent months, that doesn't apply to business. And I think by giving businesses support as well, Liz Truss is trying to prevent a cascade of insolvencies across the UK, which could lead to rising joblessness.
And, you know, when we're talking about these caps, etc., it's wonderful news for us potentially as those that are paying the bills. But what will that do, though, to the demand, Liam? Because this is one of the things that concerns me a little bit. If you keep the prices low, isn't that just going to push demand up and then around and around we go?
Well, if prices are capped roughly at where they were in April 2022, that's still pretty high by historic standards. So there should be some what we call demand destruction, people using less energy, you know, nagging the kids to turn the lights off and taking shorter showers, businesses finding different ways to do processes that are less energy intensive and so on. So I think some of that incentive will be there. But we're right to focus on the cost of this. This is going to cost, 70 to 100 billion pounds. That's more than the cost of furlough. To put that in context, Michelle, we spend roughly 140 billion quid every year on the NHS. So an extra 100 billion, that doubles UK government borrowing in a single year. We are seeing some of the implications of that on financial markets. The pound has been bottoming out at the lowest since 1985, around $1.15, and also the cost of government borrowing on those financial markets is going up. It's the highest now it's been since 2011 in the aftermath of that global financial crisis. I think Liz Truss can deliver this as long as the economy keeps growing, as long as she can keep doing those supply side reforms. That's the really hard part of her agenda, trying to make the economy grow faster. Then I think the financial markets will, for now, give her the benefit of the doubt.
Let's hope so. Liam Halligan, that's our business and economics editor. Thank you for your time. Emma Burnell, sorry, I was going to ask you your thoughts on the energy side of things.
So I think Liz Truss, from what I understand of the potential model of this package, and I do want to take issue with something that Liam said, which is this is not energy reform. This is a moment of crisis intervention, but what's not happening is change to the shape of the market, the way the market's managed, investment at the moment coming into different ways of generating energy.
No, but hang on, because in order to do reform, you've got to press pause and give yourself
absolutely.
breathing
I'm
space.
just saying that this is not reform. We're not at a reform moment at the moment. So there may well be reform coming. I certainly hope there are. I think we've seen the limits of this market model. But where I think Liz Truss is slightly making...
What do you mean?
I mean that the way that we have the split between wholesale energy and energy producers at the moment has led to basically our energy, the the companies that we buy our energy from were largely encouraged to build a large market betting on the future price of gas. And most of them got the bets wrong. And that's why so many went under recently. And that's why so many customers like myself, who were using things like those switch systems where you would just switch from cheap system to cheap system to cheap system, got about a year ago, suddenly our energy bills, so my energy bill doubled a year ago, never mind what's going to happen to me next month. And that's what I mean by the fact that this market system, the way that it's set up, our particular model of market isn't working. I'm not necessarily saying there shouldn't be any market at all. I'm saying this model has been shown not to work, particularly in a more volatile world for things like gas, where we are reliant for gas on countries like Russia, where an autocracy, and for oil on places like the Middle East, which are also not democracies that we have necessarily the closest relations with. So we are beholden too often to other people's countries' interests rather than our own. So we're not nearly energy reliant enough, energy self-sufficient enough. That's largely what I mean about the model. Where I think Liz Truss is going to do something that will make her quite popular if she manages to cap bills now. Where I think the problem is that when Liz Truss says, I don't believe in handouts, if what we're talking about is that these are big loans to the energy companies that are then paid back through people's bills, the only people getting a handout there are the energy companies, not the energy companies' customers, who will be forced into higher bills when the energy price actually drops in a few years' time.
And what do you think about profits of these energy producers? I remember Rishi Sunak, when he was obviously campaigning to be leader, one of the things that he kind of flirted, and I was surprised it didn't get a bit more traction actually, Ali, he wanted to create some kind of global price cartel where he would set a cap that you would actually pay for your, I don't mean the consumers would pay, I mean that you would buy your energy at. It never really got any traction. And I wonder, would you be a fan? It's almost kind of like, it's not price fixing per se, but would you be a fan of that kind of cartel movement to try and cap what people will be willing to buy their energy for?
Well, I think EU energy ministers are actually discussing some of these issues. I mean, look, it is a free market in energy. The issue is you've got a small number of producers that are actually responsible for generating most of it. Now, oil and gas exploration companies already have a higher tax rate anyway than the 19%, which Liz Truss is not putting up, by the way. And they've also now had the Windfall Tax, which, again, at the beginning of this campaign, her leadership campaign, she said I thought she was going to reverse. Then it sort of went a bit quiet. Then was she going to increase it? Looks like she's not going to increase it further. But look, you've got to be sensible about it. I do think there is a call for a windfall tax right now because they are profiting from exponentially high oil and gas prices right now.
Someone say it's profiting from what?
Well, exactly. But the other thing is that you've also got to bear in mind that when they then make losses, are we talking about socialising the losses and bailing them out? So I think you have to be a bit sensible about this. But I do think right now there is an argument for the windfall tax, which is why I believe it should remain in place. And by the way, Labour's plan, which was apparently going to last about 6 months, which was to increase the windfall tax even more, do away with the £400 going to every household in the country, etc. It was going to cost $30 billion. I think a lot of people in the country think that that was a good plan because they feel that the energy companies are profiteering too much at the moment from something that they haven't really put blood, sweat and toil into. And we need to be incentivising them to keep investing in the green economy as well. Liz Truss on that, by the way, is doing a few things. She's increasing fracking licences. She wants to open up fracking. There may be impacts on the environment on that. We'll have to wait and see. She also wants to increase licences and exploration in the North Sea. Now, that in the short term and medium term seems to be sensible, given the fact that we've got two issues. One is energy price, but the other is energy security and supply, and that's why she's doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with her language on fracking is that she says fracking where it would be welcomed. And I've asked the question over and over again, where is this community desperate to start fracking in their front gardens? Because
well, it depends what you motivate and incentivise those people with.
I mean, yes and no, but I don't know that there are places that are going to welcome fracking. And if it's just, again, this kind of boosterism, rather than actually having a concrete plan to make it happen, then I don't think fracking's just a word, not an answer. I think there are lots and lots of more green energy we should be investing in. I have done a 180 on nuclear power, which as a young woman, which obviously I'm not anymore, I was significantly against. I now absolutely, and have for about a decade or so, realise that when you tell other people they have to make hard compromises, that's something you've got to learn to do yourself. And for me, nuclear energy has to be part of the mix if we're going to combat climate change and be energy secure.
Let me know your thoughts on the energy side of things. I was asking you as well. We'll be talking a lot about who's going in the door of number 10, who is potentially going to be the next cabinet. I'm asking you tonight, who do you want to be in the next cabinet? What names and in which roles? Get in touch. Tell me, what is your dream cabinet? Trevor says Kwasi, Suella, Kemi and Tugendhat would make him smile. And also he wants to see John Redwood. He thinks that is the future, the way forward. Matthew says that basically my dream team would be an all-Brexit cabinet government. That's what he wants to see. But what do you want to see? Tell me, who is your dream cabinet? I'll tell you who is not in it. Johnny Mercer, he no longer is the Veterans Minister. Grant Shapps, no longer in his role. Who else? Steve Barclay, no longer in his role. Of course, Dominic Raab, no longer in his role as well. Tell me who do you want to see replace them, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping me company, Ali Mirage and Emma Burnell. We're with you right through until 7 o'clock tonight. Lots of changes, of course, today. The Home Secretary, of course, Priti Patel, confirmed her resignation last night. The new Home Secretary is expected to be the Attorney General, Suella Braverman. We've seen her going into the door of number 10 a few minutes ago. Joining me now, the GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Good evening to you. A good appointment, do you reckon Suella is going to be the person to get to grips with what's going on the channel?
Well, if it's her, it's certainly been briefed out, I think, quite extensively to a lot of the media that Suella Braverman is the hot tip to take over as Home Secretary. Priti Patel, as you said, decided that she would jump before she suffered the indignity of being sacked. And, of course, she's been followed this evening by a number of others, including, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary Dominic Raab, Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, and Nadine Dorris. So they're all deciding they'll go before they're pushed. But Suella Braverman, as you say, she's got a very, very difficult job ahead of her, because I think top of the list for the Home Secretary will be getting a grip of the small boat crisis and the number of vessels that continue to come across. We had just at the weekend there on Sunday 1,160 people coming across. On Saturday, 960.
See, it's just an absolute jerk, isn't it? Sorry, I mean, I know that I should try and pick my words, and I am, but it's just ludicrous. There's nobody now, surely, any side of the political spectrum that cannot think this is almost some kind of crisis emergency. Something has to be done. But what? Everyone comes up with ideas, Mark, and they all fail because, many would say, because of the lawyers, because of the rules, regulations, the European Court of Human Rights.
Well, interestingly, Liz Truss, in her campaigning, said that she was wedded to the Rwanda policy, as will, of course, Suella Braverman now. This Rwanda policy is going nowhere anytime fast, though, because this week we have the court hearing that is taking place over 5 days at the Royal Courts of Justice, a judicial review that's being brought challenging the initial court rulings that said actually the policy was lawful. You can send groups of asylum seekers across to Rwanda and they can effectively be sent on a one-way ticket. That was the ruling of the British courts. But then, of course, the European court...
But then why didn't they just get on with it and do it then?
Well, they decided that they were going to abide by the ruling of a European court, which said that that should be halted until the legality of this has been ascertained. And the legality of it is now being ascertained in this judicial review.
But this is what many of my viewers will not really understand, because if you get a ruling that actually you can do it, why don't you just get it done, send a plane over there, and whilst you're doing your legal wranglings, people are over there potentially deterring others from doing that crossing.
By nature of the court system we have, unfortunately, or fortunately, many people would say, it is a system whereby if you lose one particular court case, you can appeal to a higher court. And we see that in all walks of life, in lots of different cases. So, you know, cases that are at the High Court, then someone loses, they can appeal to the Court of Appeal, they can appeal to the Supreme Court in the UK, the European Court of Human Rights. There's all kinds of avenues.
What if the new Home Secretary, I'm not advising this, by the way, I'm just playing devil's advocate, what if she just said, you know what, I'm just going to send this plane and then I'll deal with the consequences?
The difficulty with doing that, as tempting as that would be for a Home Secretary or a Prime Minister trying to get to grips with a crisis, is that we, as the United Kingdom, pride ourselves in being leaders in the world when it comes to human rights and the rule of law. So that rules-based system, the treaty that we've signed up to in the form of the European Convention on Human Rights, for instance, if we decided to then just disregard that and send people to Rwanda regardless of the potential consequences of this treaty, then the UK would be condemned internationally.
Many people will be watching and saying, so what?
Yeah, no, I get that. Especially across the country, many people would. But for those in power who absolutely see the UK's ability to be able to champion the rules-based order and to be able to say to people in the world, we respect laws, you should, if you're a pariah state, you need to get your house in order. It's difficult as the UK to be able to do that.
Yeah, but Mark, wasn't the answer for the UK to withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights, get its ducks in a row, pass the relevant laws here before it announced the Rwanda policy, not afterwards, and not in the middle of it, trying to then ex post trying to move it through Parliament? It was a complete shambles. It again shows that in the previous government, and I hope Liz gets a grip of this, making an announcement is not the same as actually achieving a policy outcome. It was a complete and utter shambles. We were waiting for people to be, are they going to go off the tarmac or are they not going to go off the tarmac? In the end, no one went. Now we're in judicial review, as you rightly say. And this is what Suella Braverman's got to get a grip of. She is a lawyer. She's a barrister by background. You would hope that she would have a better grip on this, because optically this looks appalling. One of the major reasons why we decided to leave the EU, and I don't care what the Brexiteers say about sovereignty, that was part of it. A major reason, as GB viewers, a lot of them will feel, was immigration and getting a handle on the fact that we control our borders. Optically, this is the worst advert for Britain controlling its borders, when you have people every day coming across, a number of them, by the way, from Albania, which is a candidate for accession to the EU, no less, coming along and trying to circumvent the proper immigration system by abusing this migrant channel crossing. I remember last year, 27 people sadly died in a dinghy trying to cross the channel. It's a shambles. It needs to be sorted out. They need to withdraw from the Convention on Human Rights if that's what they want to do, and they need to get on with it and make it happen quickly.
Well, I think you make a very good point on the issue of them constantly making announcements without actually thinking through the consequences of that announcement and whether they'd be able to make it happen in practice. We got that in April, of course, with Boris Johnson and Priti Patel both announcing not just the Rwanda policy, but more money, of course, for France, the Linton-on-Ouse camp that was going to go up there to house about 1,200 odd asylum seekers. All of these, you know, France isn't really doing anything in terms of stopping the majority of these boats coming across. Linton-on-Ouse is in disarray. The Ministry of Defence withdrew the permission for the Home Office to use the base because of the public outcry. The Home Office says it still wants to pursue this kind of policy, but hasn't come up with any way of actually doing that. And then, of course, as you say, there's also the Rwanda issue and the vexed question of, do we pull out of the European Convention on Human Rights, which is doable, but it's also very complicated because it's an intrinsic part of our law in this country. The Good Friday Agreement was based in part on the ECHR as well.
But then I thought, Mark, we were meant to be replacing EU law with British law. This is what we've always been told. This is the pup we've been sold. So let's do it. I mean, this was the whole entire rationale, that we would not be abiding by EU laws anymore. We'd be setting our own rules, and that's what the government needs to follow through on.
Well, I think the British Bill of Rights is what the government is sort of banking on at the moment. It's still going through Parliament, but when that comes into law, what they're hoping is that that will empower British judges not to be as influenced by the European Court in Strasbourg, that they can then make decisions and determinations aside from that. Let's see if that works in practice, because if it doesn't, then obviously it is that question, do we pull out of the ECHR? As I say, it will be very complicated to do that, but it might
That's
be
getting a lot of favour from my inbox. And tell you, Emma Burnell, I'll bring you in onto this. We all agree it's an absolute mess. Yeah. What is the answer there?
I think the answer is to slow down, to think first about how you stop the endangered people in boats.
Which endangered people?
Well, the people in the boats are in danger. One of the arguments that we all agree on is that we don't want people in small boats in the Channel. We may have different motives for our disagreement, but we all agree that they are endangered in that process. So what I think we need to do is stop making fiat by headline, and actually, as Mark has said, you've got, and Ali as well, I'm afraid we're going to agree again. This is becoming a very agreeable show.
I'm not going to agree with you.
But we need to make policy that works rather than policy that pleases. And if you just have a pleasing headline with nothing underneath it that says this won't be a shambles because we haven't thought it through about how we're actually going to implement it. If this government, democratically elected, does something I don't like in pulling out of the European Court of Human Rights, that is the democratic choice of this government. They need to take it through the democratic parliament and see if they can get it passed. If, on the other hand, they just say we're just going to break that convention willy-nilly without thinking about what the consequences are, without thinking about what the international consequences are in terms of our soft and hard power in the world, in terms of our ability to trade with other nations, in terms of our international reputation, then I think that that is what I mean by doing things as a headline rather than a thought-through policy.
And that would be wonderful if slowing down would be fantastic if you've got, I don't know, one person getting in a dinghy every other week. I mean, the numbers that Mark has just been describing, this is an emergency situation in my mind. So having this luxury of taking all this time, that is a pipe
everything
dream.
we've tried to do to stop them has not worked and has left us in further shambles. So what I'm saying is, unless you know what the answer is, an implementable answer right now, that I think we need to take that time, because at the moment if we don't stop and take the time to do it properly, we'll just keep this shambolic thing. So the boats will keep coming, we'll keep having this argument, and the shambles will carry on and on and on.
But it cannot be beyond the wit of man, Mark, to defend the borders of this country, because to me, we're failing miserably at that. If this was some kind of, I don't know, attack from whoever that wanted to try and create us harm, you'd surely be able to police your border properly. So to me, this is almost like a lack of will.
I think the real difficulty is that you have to try to break the model of the people smuggling gangs, the criminal gangs across northwestern France. Now, there are more than 60 miles of usable beach that they can set off from. You literally would need tens of thousands of French police officers on these beaches 24 hours a day to actually make any kind of meaningful impact on the boats coming across. Having said that, the Rwanda model, if they could get it past the courts and it was deemed to be lawful, has the potential to work in breaking that model. But you would have to effectively say that anyone who comes into the UK via irregular means, so in small boats and in the backs of lorries, will be automatically sent to Rwanda. It's difficult to see how that might work in practice if you're also talking about women and children as well. But if those people on the other side of the channel, though, if they knew that in coming here, then automatically they don't stay here, they get sent to Rwanda, that's one way you can break that model.
Oh, I had a question that I wanted to ask. You know, one of those questions where you think, I'm not sure I should ask that because I don't know if it's a schoolgirl, silly question. I was just about to ask it and then I've just been told that I've got to go to Nigel. So I'll ask it very briefly. You probably don't have time for a long answer because Nigel is patiently waiting. Something that strikes me as really odd, and don't shout at me if it's a silly question. If you're coming from Albania, why don't you just take a flight and then disappear when you get here? Why all of this with the boats?
You can't just take a flight into another country without securing a visa, tourist visa, to a place like the UK. So you would never get off the ground in the first place unless you could show that you had means, that you were coming for a holiday, that you got your visa granted, then you can come over.
Oh, well, just get on booking.com, book something. Free cancellation policy, but there again, what do I know? Nigel Farage, thank you very much to my panel. And of course to Mark, thank you for your company at home as well. Nigel Farage up in just a couple of minutes. Nigel, what have you got for us?
Michelle, good evening. Great range of guests tonight. We'll talk about the gas market. We'll talk about the economy. We'll talk about immigration, which was not mentioned by Liz Truss today on the steps of Downing Street. And we'll ask the question, is Liz Truss off to a good start? All of that in a moment. But first, let's get the very changeable weather.
Good evening. I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. Tomorrow, more of the same. Just like today, it's going to be a mixture of, yes, a bit of blue sky, a few sunny spells, but also plenty of heavy showers and a few thunderstorms thrown in for good measure, all swirling around this big area of low pressure that's dominating our weather and will continue to control things, well, for the rest of the week. Around that low, bands of heavy showers drifting north overnight, so there's a chance you may get woken up by a rumble of thunder or a flash of lightning. Nowhere immune from the downpours. There'll be lengthy dry spells between the bands of showers, and it's going to be a pretty warm night as well. The air's coming up from the south, so temperatures again likely to stay in the mid-teens in most towns and cities. And again, it's a case of dodging those downpours on Wednesday. We'll see some sunshine in the morning over parts of the Midlands, East Anglia in particular, central Scotland too. Got a wet start in northern Scotland, and then elsewhere, just we'll watch the showers developing, swirling around that.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to